Sir, we would like to start with some assumptions that you have taken in the budget for revenue growth. Now, in the current year, you revised, going by the numbers, while the nominal GDP is around 18% for the current year, that is the expectation, 18% growth. The gross tax revenue growth is seen as 24%. For the coming year, at 11% nominal GDP growth, you're only assuming a 9.6% gross tax revenue growth. So is it the case of something similar could happen next year like happened this year, that you were conservative about your revenue estimates and your revised estimates were much, much higher? So is that something that you're counting on this year as well?
When you talk of 9.6% growth in the revenues for the next year, this is taking excise duty into account.
Okay.
So now the excise duty has actually gone down. And excise duty is specific duty and not ad valorem. So my excise duty actually is anticipated to go down by almost 15%.
Okay.
From about 3.94 to about 3.35 lakh crores. So if you take that into account, then the growth is about 14.2%. And 14.2% growth rate, if you take this growth rate as a reasonable growth rate, which I may not have achieved many a time in the past. So I have taken a challenging thing. I also want to say this, that if this year I look at it, while the returns will tell me exactly, but this year I have made, when I say the department has got a lot of revenue through capital gains. Now capital gains is a game of the market. If the market continues to do like this, we might get money. If it doesn't do that well, we may not get that money. So keeping all that into account, we have been pretty realistic. But doing a macro increase like this might give us a different figure. So if you do a little deeper analysis, I think we have taken all things into consideration and then come to about 14.2%, and I think it's a challenging task.
As you know, there is a difference between being conservative and being realistic. In that sense, the assumption is that corporate and personal income tax will grow by 15% in the next year. So is that a conservative estimate or a realistic estimate?
I would say that it is a challenging target for me.
Okay.
In the sense, 15% increase has not happened to us many a time in the past. And this is happening, or this is what we are anticipating or estimating to happen to us after a good year. So the base itself is expanded. My tax to GDP ratio this time would be 11 plus. That's what I'm anticipating. So if it is 11 plus, over and above that, if I get a 15% increase and GDP grows by 11 or 12%, that means my buoyancy is 1.25. I was looking at figures, and while talking to Finance Commission, when I looked at the past, we have not had many occasions where my buoyancy has been 1.25. In fact, at times it has been 0.9 or 1 or at the most 1.1.
What buoyancy are you looking at for next year? I'm sorry if I missed that point.
If you take the GDP as 11, what they mentioned, and if the growth rate, if you leave out the excise duty, if it is 14%, so it is 1.3.
In the post-budget press conference, the finance minister said that so far the government has not done a deeper analysis of how many individual taxpayers have shifted to the new regime, and that is an exercise happening. That came later. Before that came the corporate tax cut. On that, you have an idea of how many corporates shifted to the new tax regime? If you could just...
On the corporate tax, we have figures for 1920, which was the first year that they filed the returns in 2020. We have analyzed the data for that year. 65% of the income and about 16% of the assessees have shifted to the new regime.
65% in terms of value and 16% in terms of the number of assessees. Okay.
So it basically means that people with higher incomes have actually moved to the new regime. And our anticipation is that as and when the exemptions are exhausted for individual taxpayers, they will keep shifting. So the 65% may have gone up in the current year when we analyze after the year is over. And the numbers of assessees also.
Okay. But on the personal income tax front, sir, what is the plan for the department going ahead? Will you push the new regime, or
we want to push the new regime because we want to push the non-exemption regime. But at the same time, we also want to analyze the data. Only then would we like to tinker with the new scheme to see that what is it that is stopping people. For example, the tax kicks in the new scheme at 2.5 lakhs.
Right.
While in this case, without any exemption till 5 lakhs, you pay no taxes. And 75% of the returns are filed below 5 lakhs amongst the individuals and HUFs.
One of the announcements was that surcharge on capital gains was reduced for consortiums, which is association of persons, as well as on transfers of certain kind of assets. But beyond this, also industry has been asking for streamline of capital gains tax, because right now the definition of long and short term is different for bonds, for equities, and for real estate, as well as the rates. So industry has been asking for a streamlining that stick to a single definition across asset classes. That was not done, and that is something. So, do you think that is something the government will consider going ahead?
I think it should consider going ahead. There should be parity on certain items on financial and non-financial. The problem is that everybody says that you come to the lowest common income. So today, 1 year is your long term for equity, and 2 years is for property. So you bring this to 1 year. We really need to look at what asset is long term, what is short term, and then take a call. So if you do that, there will be some losers and some gainers.
Yes.
So we'll see. The industry also should have the capacity and the will to accept that if a certain principled decision is taken by the government at any stage, then they should accept that a little bit of a loss there, or a little bit of gain for some.
And now you have come out with a sort of a situation where the tax department, for the first time in its history, has been told to tax a sector on which the regulations are still awaited. What is your idea of how much you could, in a ballpark, perhaps how much could you generate from this 30% tax on crypto transactions?
It is not necessary that every activity in the country should be regulated. Even if it is unregulated, it can be taxed. So it is an unregulated activity at the moment, and whether it is to be regulated or it is to be banned, which is also regulation, will be a call taken by the concerned department. We have not calculated as to how much tax we get, because it will depend on how much trade happens. Whether people make profit or losses. If they make losses, then we'll get TDS, but then the refund will come. So we have not made that, and that was never the intention. If we get 5,000, 2,000, 10,000 crores, it doesn't make much of a difference. But the whole idea was that this will also avoid disputes between the department and the assessees. Right now, he can say that I charge me on long-term or a short-term capital gains, or charge me on other sources, or charge me on a business income if he's dealing in derivatives and doing 20 transactions in a day. So then there would be some kind of a dispute with the assessing officer. So now everybody knows this is the way it is to be done. So that is the short purpose of this.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.